A big part of the reason I don't record much or go live is because I have 2 young children who fight constantly and interrupt me. It's just sometimes not worth the hassle. I'm trying to get this out just so people can understand the path that I feel the Lord has been bringing me on. So, we quit going to church, started messing up, ended up on probation. While I was on probation, I did go to drug and alcohol counseling outside of my hometown. And it actually really helped me. And I was able to like quit drinking and quit doing everything. I ended up getting off probation in like 2 months because I just listened to what they said and jumped through all their hoops. And I was able to quit smoking cigarettes. And then found out I was pregnant. So long story short, I was a mom. Like that was all I've ever really known. I had her right before I got out of high school, and I was a really good mom for several years. I nursed her and I took her everywhere with me. I remember people complimenting me on always having my daughter with me, and people were really proud of me that I was stepping up to my responsibility. And then her dad and I weren't getting along and we split up. And then I moved out, and a few years later ended up becoming a bartender when I was in my 20s. And things were really hard because everyone supported my job as a bartender. At the time, like, it was a lot of fun. A lot of like close family and friends would come down to the bar to eat, or we had like pool night. So it was just kind of a regular thing for my whole family and friends and everybody to just hang out at the bar and have drinks and, just conversate. And we had a DJ and dancing, and it was a lot of fun back then. I was, because I was making money, I justified being at the bar all the time because that was how I made my living. So it can really kind of mess with your head when you make money doing something that's not righteous or godly, because we trick ourselves into thinking it's justified because we gotta earn a living somehow, right? So for years, that's kind of what I told myself and what kind of kept me in that position. And after some time, like eventually, like it started to catch up with me. I was drinking every day, and then it led, after 3 years, it ended up leading to like harder drugs like meth and cocaine, and I was just slowly becoming a worse and worse mother because my priorities were not in the right place. And so actually I started to get visions, which is crazy because at the time I just didn't really understand or look at them as visions. But things were getting so progressively worse in my life, financially and just everything. And I started to see my daughter getting taken away from me. God was showing me that. And so I knew, like, in my spirit that I needed to make some changes or I was going to lose my daughter. And so instead of, staying in that situation, I packed up everything and moved 2 hours away. I sent my daughter to live with my mother in Pilot Rock. And I just worked to get my shit together so she could come back and stay with me, and, things wouldn't end up that way. I ended up enrolling in college, and me and my boyfriend at the time, who I met at the bar, we were drinking a lot. Both enrolled in school. We were homeless for 2 months. Like, life was crazy. We went through a lot together. On our way to move, we got a flat tire, And there was a friend there that helped us get the tire fixed. And as much as there were like obstacles and opposition, it's like there was a solution like right on the other end. And so, you know, it would have been really easy for me to look at those challenges as a sign to not go to Bend and, you know, think it was the wrong path. But something inside me told me to just keep going. So I listened to that voice and ended up doing really good in school. Ended up getting sober. My boyfriend did not get sober, so that ended up creating some conflict with us, but really not too much because I was just so focused on doing better and going to school that, I mean, as long as he was like pulling his weight, I just didn't really even care what he was doing. He always showed up sometime in the night, and, you know, he did meet me in the middle on a lot of things. And so after several months, he was a landscaper for some friends of ours that were LDS, and they were inactive, but they were, the gentleman was raised Mormon and his wife converted to marry him. And so, you know, they didn't really talk to us much about the church, but we just knew that about them. They were really good, kind people who helped us out a lot. And they even let us live in their landscaping like shed or garage for the winter because they were closed. And so we lived there for several months. And I remember I used to shower at the community center, which is crazy. You definitely get the perspective of what it's like to be homeless and have nothing. And then when I enrolled in school, you get a free gym membership. And so then I started showering at the gym because this landscaping shed, we had our bed and it had a bathroom, but it didn't have a shower. And so my ex was landscaping at one of the local non-denominational Christian churches there in Bend. And they invited us to church one day. So Donnie's always like been super friendly and talkative, and so, you know, he accepted the invitation and invited me to go with him to church. So we went, and it was kind of crazy. We ended up, you know, they called people up to repent in front of church, in front of everybody, and we went up there together, and excuse me, we got on our knees, we started to cry and like repent in front of everybody. And it was a profound experience, you know, it was real. And, you know, we ended up going to the church quite a bit. We got pretty close with the pastor and his wife. And then we decided to get baptized. And I remember at the time, like I was smoking cigarettes. We were both still drinking. He smoked cigarettes as well. We were living together, unmarried, still sinning completely, like doing everything we did before. And after we got baptized, I don't know. I remember feeling the Spirit. It wasn't super strong, but I remember feeling like super disappointed after, like, how can you make such a huge commitment to God and nothing about your life changes? And they're not even encouraging you for it to change. And so I just remember feeling really disappointed and confused. And so I went to my friend who was Mormon, and I shared with her my experience getting baptized. And her husband, you know, they had been active for 7 years, but they started to kind of talk about the fact that I got baptized. And even though it wasn't a Mormon church, like they still felt like it was kind of a big deal. And so we started talking about religion a lot and God and different things. And she decided she was going to start going back to the Mormon church. And shortly after that, I became pregnant with Dante after praying for him for like 2 years. And she invited me and my boyfriend to move in with them and go to church with them, so we could save money because we both worked for them. I did housekeeping and he did landscaping. And so I thought this was like such a big deal because, Like, my ex was an ex-gang member. Like, he had spent 15 years in prison. He had tattoos all over him. And they didn't know me from a hole in the wall, you know? And they absolutely did not owe us anything. And for them to have trusted us in their home with their children spoke volumes to me. Like, you know, what kind of people just trust others, like, that they don't even know, to live in their house, you know, and try to help them and help them save money. And I just was like so overwhelmed by their generosity that I wanted to know more about them and why they were so trusting. And so I really took it serious. The missionaries would come over and I'd go to church with them, and they have an hour after church every Sunday where you can ask questions and talk about the Book of Mormon and why they believe what they believe. And that really helped me to, you know, understand things. And before I ever went to the church, and this was in Redmond, the only things I knew, I had absolutely no history of Mormonism or Hebrew Israelite truth or doctrine. So that's how, like, I know that God was the one kind of like taking me on this path and teaching me, because I had absolutely no knowledge or research, you know, before I started learning about these different things. And so I ended up really falling in love with the people in the church. And the only thing I ever knew about Mormons before I started going was just like all the things people will tell you, you know, about the fact that, oh, Mormons don't drink coffee, you know, and you never actually go and talk to a Mormon or try to do research to figure out what the purpose of that is. Everybody's just like, that's weird. Why don't they drink coffee? They're weird. I mean, without any explanation, people just automatically write them off because they're strange because they don't drink coffee like the rest of the world. Now, since I've grown to know more about the gospel, it actually says that God's people won't fit into the world and will be set apart from the world. So that right there alone, just in the beginning, not knowing anything, would have fit more in line with God's chosen people for the fact that they don't drink coffee. Yet here we are completely rejecting them because we just don't understand. And so they don't drink tea and all these other things. And so I remember, you know, when I went, that was where the first questions I'd ask, like, why don't you do these things? You know, and the coffee thing, it was actually a revelation that they weren't supposed to drink a hot drink. And, you know, that included a lot of different things back when he received the revelation. And now today, back then, they had no clue why God told them not to drink that. But if you do research now, there's evidence to prove hot drinks really aren't good for your intestines or your stomach. And caffeine is one of the number one causes of death. And coffee and tea alone are the highest grown products with the most pesticides, because their sweet leaves attract a lot of insects. And so, you know, for him to have received the revelation that he really received back when he did, and then to have the evidence now that confirms, you know, really in the grand scheme of things, because of the way that they process things and the negative effects of caffeine, it really is pretty miraculous that he received that revelation when he did, before they had any kind of knowledge of those things. So, in all honesty, it's not really that weird at all. And it seems perfectly normal that God may ask us not to do those things or put anything harmful in our bodies, you know? So that was the first thing that was answered for me as I went to the Mormon church myself and just, investigated and asked questions that I thought, that actually makes sense. So I'm going to keep learning and keep going and see what else I can find out, As I began to go, things that really stood out to me were the ordinances, the sacrament. It made sense to me that you would take the sacrament every Sunday in remembrance of Jesus because he asks us to remember him. So why would you do it, once a month or once every 6 months? You should do it every day, if not at least every week. And I thought that was pretty profound that they took initiative and did the things that Jesus told us to do to remember him every single week. And there was just so many other things that just really spoke to my spirit as I began to study the Bible and learn about Jesus. It really started to confirm why Mormons practice the way that they do.